We're all in our private traps. And none of us can ever get out. We scratch and claw, but only at the air, only at each other.
We wanted to provide a new experience to the person listening to the cycle.
We're capable now of presenting it in a sound space that we feel the filmmakers would approve.
Have I broken any laws?
No, ma'am.
Then I'm free to go.
That movie was basically right up the middle and center with everything.
Now, just a moment. Turn your motor off, please.
When you use 5.1 surround sound applications, the sound engineer will be able to move music and effects into space, emerging the audience into sound.
Without removing you from the visual space.
The same effect that we're getting in a movie theater.
There are three parts to a feature. There's dialogue where the story lives.
It might be nicer and warmer in the office.
There's effects where the action lives. And then there's music where the emotion lives. If you don't have one or the other in a 5.1 presentation, you kind of lose that.
We didn't want to do a pseudo music mix, and when you're confined to a mono track, unfortunately, there was no way that we could do it correctly and create a true 5.1. Not until we had the introduction to this organization that came out of France, Audionomics.
The company has been around for 5 years, so it's like 4.5 years of research, understanding how can we get what we call the holy grail of sound, being able to reverse engineer sound.
They were trying to take a monoized stem, go in there and extrapolate these pieces and make them separate pieces to where we could actually move them around and create a new mix.
After all, Cassidy, I told you, all that cash. I'm not taking the responsibility.
The idea behind our technology is taking pretty much the DNA of every single pieces of this music.
Well, I ain't about to kiss off $40,000.
Then we have a track for the voice, a track for any other instruments.
I'll get it back, and if any of it's missing, I'll replace it with her fine, soft flesh.
Taking those different instruments, we can now provide a total different experience to the person listening.
Hot creeper, she sat there while I dumped it out. Hardly even looked at it.
5.1 means that you have 6 channels of diffusion. You've got a center, a right and left channel in front of the audience. You also have 2 back, 1 left and 1 right. And what we call a sub-channel, which is basically used to diffuse all the low frequencies.
And this way, the person gets pretty much the same experience that Alfred Hitchcock had when they were recording.
It's never been heard before in that manner. To be able to exploit that and be able to listen to the fullness of it and the bass and the strings, to me, that's just fabulous.
It brings it to life. The fact of the extraction, I can create more space. It's a new technology, and we're excited about it.
We didn't change anything. Everything is as it used to be, except we're providing a different experience to the user.
I'm in a hurry, and I just want to make a change.
It's too nice a day to argue. I'll shoot your car in the garage here.
We're not here to recreate what was already created in this movie. What we're all about in doing this project is being able to take what's there and make sure that we can put it where it needs to be put based on how the camera moves. And I'll give you, for instance, the highway patrolman pulls up in front of the used car lot there, and so menacing, he's just standing next to his car, observing what she's doing there. And we see a car come to the right, left to right, and we see another car go from the right to the left. What we want to be able to do is, I want to take that mono track where we actually heard the car, it's in the center, and I want to be able to bring that 57 wagon from the left side to the center where we see the highway patrolman and pass it all the way to the right, and we see the car go off to the right. That's really how we go ahead and construct our new 5.1 effect stem.
I think Hitchcock would have been fine with it, as long as you don't go over the top. Don't ruin my story. That's what you have to be reverent to. Don't play the car door too loud.
It's really about what Hitch is trying to sell you on that front screen right there.
There's a rain scene she drives in. That's a challenge, because it's hard to layer rain. It can sound like what we call white noise or pink noise, which is just a roar, and that's not definitive. You want to hear rain. You want to hear drops hitting the windshield. So that's a separate track unto itself. There's probably 5 or 6 stereo tracks, which means 12 tracks plus mono-specific tracks that are playing at that one time, just to create the sound of rain.
And you really feel that weather around this car as she's driving. You actually hear the wet tires of the cars going by. On her left side, on her POV of the front windshield. You'll hear on the right side when it's POV of her behind the steering wheel driving. So you get that sense of motion of where she's at.
It's all these details that you don't really think about. We hope you don't think about when you're watching the movie, but we have to.
Gee, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you in all this rain.
The layers on the shower sequence is really about sustaining what's there. We've got a grab and grasp of that shower curtain, and we'll feel that movement as it comes across the shower rod.
There's paper that she's unwrapping, the soap. There's water, of course. The big impact is the music. This is where Bernard Herrmann steals the show.
I believe that this specific scene is part of our musical patrimony. I mean, has it been haunting me? I guess so, for years.
The high strings, there's a couple layers of those playing, and there's cello and then double basses that play at the end. It's just impactful. When I first heard it split out, it scared me. And that was the original intent, so we play that up.
If you were thrilled or chilled by the first version of the movie, it's going to be much more stressing.
How do you get a car to roll in a mud pit and actually have it sit there and idle halfway where the audience is going, oh my God, it's stuck, and he realizes that, you know, that car is not moving anymore, and he's looking around, he's nervous, and then all of a sudden you hear a little burst of a bubble. It starts to engage and starts to go down into that swamp again. There's some real high-endy bubble sounds where it goes blop, 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 you know, at the very, very end. That will remain. You'll just be able to now feel a little bit more because we've got a little bit more around it instead of everything crowded in the middle. You hear the environment of the crickets and a little bit of the swamp sounds in there, and I think it really adds to that overall feeling of what's taking place right there. You have to understand, in the day, they were going in with raw audio and mixing in and mixing out, carrying all the anomalies with them in their final mix. If we're able to take every anomaly out of a movie, it lowers the sound threshold to where we have purity in there. And that's really what we want to try to do.
We went so deep into the DNA of the music during this extraction process that we discovered that we could hear birds singing.
It happens when the door opens. The only thing we can surmise from that is that back in the day in '59, when they scored this, the scoring stages were big barns. They're very large spaces, and they had very tall ceilings, and they had big doors in front that would open up, and often birds would fly in. You hear the birds.
It has been really a great opportunity for us to be part of this adventure. The fact that our technology was able to bring new generations the opportunity to discover Herrmann's score, the way perhaps Herrmann was aiming to deliver it to the audience, was something really great and something we're really thankful to have been working on.
This film is iconic. People all over the world are familiar with this movie. It has to do with Bernard Herrmann's score. It has to do with Hitchcock's storytelling. It has to do with the very simple story that this is built around. You can see how films are built today based upon this movie. It's a piece of American history.
Norman Bates no longer exists. He only half existed to begin with.
Hitchcock made everything work on that screen. It was all about building that tension up. That still all remains. We're going to intensify that. We're still going to hear the music. It's going to rise with the intensity that it did in that mono track, but now wrapped around us. It's going to have a fullness to it that you couldn't experience at that point in time.
We strongly believe that those movies had a huge potential that couldn't be provided to the person watching the movie because we didn't have the technology.
Mrs. Bates.
Now that we have this capability of a special effect, it's scarier than it used to be.